Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Slegaitis-Smith and this is a channel where we like to talk about writing, learning, and creating. Today we're digging back into the writing side to continue our discussion about character building, where today we are going to be digging into strengths versus weaknesses, strengths versus flaws, basically the good parts and the bad parts of your character. Let's get into it. So when people go to make the strengths and weaknesses of their characters, they tend to be very overdramatic with the ones that they apply to their characters. It is the ultimate strengths. It is the most deep weaknesses. And it's so overdramatic and over the top and way more than needs to happen. So let's talk about how we can actually make ones that are realistic instead of overblown cartoon characters. Unless you're creating a cartoon, in which case you might want to keep just a few of these in there. On the overdramatic side of the flaw category, we have things like wanting to kill the entire world, wanting to burn down an entire village, inescapable alcoholism and drug abuse, things like this. And where there could be a reason that you build into your story why they have these over-the-top flaws, they don't have to be that way. It doesn't lend to the realism of your character because most people's flaws are pretty actually ordinary and mundane. So you can incorporate some of these more dramatic flaws and have it work out. Think about like Sasuke from Naruto, where his entire clan was murdered in front of his young child eyes. That played a huge part into his anger issue flaws. Now, that was a bit overdramatic and over the top, but there was a good written explanation, not only through the Naruto series, but into the Shippuden series as well. So, think about if you are going to be putting these overdramatic flaws in, have a good reason behind them. Don't just do it because you think flaws have to be some sort of dark, soul-crushing thing. Let's talk about what the mundane flaws are that your character may have. When it comes down to it, when you're putting flaws into your character, you don't want to just put flaws in because someone told you you need to put flaws in your character to make them more realistic. What you're looking to do when you put flaws into your character is to find ways to have the circumstances that they're in exploit their flaws so that they are then able to overcome them and do something good despite the fact that they have this flaw. In a previous video, I talked about a realistic mundane flaw from my own life, where because of the type of introvert that I am, and honestly, a lot of people have this problem too, I don't like being in front of people and talking. Yet, one of my favorite things to do as a kid was be in plays, which puts you in front of people. And then my job, other than writing, is teaching, which means that I'm in front of people talking literally every day of my life. And then sometimes in the summer when we're supposed to be on summer vacation, because teachers can do that, I still do it. So there's a mundane flaw, not liking public speaking, which a lot of people have. However, what would make it more interesting in a narrative format is the fact that I'm putting myself in situations every single day that are causing me to have to overcome that flaw. So when you're putting a mundane flaw or an overdramatic flaw into your character, think about how the circumstances of the plot are going to be exploiting that flaw to make it something that is interesting and useful for the story. Let's get some examples of mundane flaws that you might want to incorporate into your characters. Other than public speaking, the very typical one to do is clumsiness. There is some level of fumbly-bumbliness to your character that is getting in the way from them accomplishing things. Maybe because it makes people underestimate them. Maybe because they're literally just messing up all the time, and they have to learn how to work around their clumsiness or incorporate it into their style of doing things, or learn how to get rid of their clumsiness entirely in order to be successful in the plot. It is a very mundane flaw, but it can be useful applied correctly. Here, Another mundane flaw that your character might have is a fear of some kind. Everybody has a fear of some kind or another. One of the most common ones that I am aware of is arachnophobia, where people are scared of spiders, whether they are little ones or they are big ones. And if you're in a fantasy universe, they're probably ginormous ones. So you can build in these fears of different things in order to help put a flaw into your character that can then also become a plot element later. So if you have your character who's an arachnophobic and you put them in front of a giant spider, what are they going to do? Their instincts are going to be telling them to run away. They're not going to want to deal with that. And as a character, you're going to want to either build in how they are running away and how that impacts the situation that they're in, or how they overcome that fear to conquer that giant spider that's in front of them. So if you incorporate a fear like that, it can be an awesome plot element that you can use in order to move the story along and do some lovely character development. And character development is awesome! Let's talk about the mundane flaw of anger issues. It is a very common one to crop up, either like anger issues or like being antisocial to some level. It's even a trope in certain categories. But often it is like way over the top applied. It is the dramatic form that is applied where like their anger issues are massively out of control or they are massively antisocial. They cannot legitimately work with others at all. So that is not usually how anger issues manifest themselves in real people. I mean, there definitely are real people who manifest in that way, but the average person who is suffering from some level of anger issues or antisocial is not quite that angry or antisocial. Usually they've been dealing it for a very long time, and they have learned coping mechanisms to help them to not do bad stuff when they're in that place. They know how to remove themselves from a situation if it is becoming overtaxing and they know that they're going to that super angry place, or they have some way to calm themselves down in the moment. So if you're going to be putting something like an anger issue or an antisocial issue into your character, one, don't necessarily go to the over the top place for these things, but also think about how your character would deal with them, because likely this is not a new thing for your character. They've experienced it before. Maybe someone's talked to them about it before. Maybe they've come to the conclusion that they need to fix things themselves. So what are the things that they are trying to do to make their life more livable, even though they are aware of the fact that this flaw is in there? And then you can also wrap that into the plot in some way, because you can make it so that it's impossible for them to use their coping mechanism. And then what do they do? Or something like that. It can add extra interest and flavor to your story if you apply it properly. Our next flaw category is a little bit of a hot button topic, so I have to put the pause button on the video to give a little bit of a disclaimer here, where I am going to be talking very generally about a sensitive topic, which is mental health issues. I am not belittling anyone's mental health issues by not getting specific. I am trying to just talk about how we apply them in general to our stories, because I can't tell you how to write your characters or what specific things that you're allowed to talk about. But when you are considering applying mental health issues to your characters in your stories, make sure that if it's something you personally experience, stay real to your experience. If you're going outside of your experience, you need to make sure that you're doing a lot of research to make sure that you are applying that properly. Now, mental health issues kind of exist on a gradation type scale, where there are some people who are going to be feeling whatever that issue is less deeply than other people do, because you have people who are non-clinically that mental health issue and people who are clinically that mental health issue. And so once you get to the clinical level, that's where the person is going to be needing extra help to deal with whatever that circumstance is. Think about mental health in this way. Everybody has mental health. Everyone has mental health issues. The severity of the issue changes depending on what that thing is and what is going on inside of that person. So, for instance, this year has been a very interesting year. This video is coming out in 2020. And there was a lot of things, or are a lot of things, that have been going on in 2020. So everyone's mental health is a little bit all over the board. I don't think there's anyone who's like, I am 100% good in my mental health category right now. Everybody is having mental health struggles along the ways. However, that does not mean that we are all at a clinical level of struggle. What I mean by saying the clinical level, that means that there is a doctor that you have talked to, they've given you a diagnosis that this is an issue that you are dealing with, and they are helping you to build whatever support structure you need in order to deal with that issue. So, most people deal with mental health issues regularly, but they don't always have to go to the level of going to a doctor and getting that extra support. They do still need support though, so if you are putting mental health issues into your story, make sure that you are thinking about what kind of coping mechanisms does your character have to deal with whatever that mental health issue is. What are things internally that they are doing for themselves? What are things externally that they are doing for themselves? Then also think about their support system. Do they have one keenly set in place? Do they trust many people with this issue? Do they trust just one person? Are they purposely shutting them off from other people? In which case they don't really have much of a support system outside themselves. Are they seeking medical attention for whatever this issue is that has come to their attention, that it is a significant issue for them, so they know that they need to seek extra assistance? If they have, what is that assistance looking like? Are they regularly seeing a psychologist, a therapist, a doctor to try to help them through whatever these things are? And once again, underscoring everything with make sure that you do your research if it is not something that you are personally dealing with. It is very easy to spread misinformation because it's very easy to receive misinformation, because most of us have our experience of these things from Hollywood movies. And Hollywood is overdramatic. They make sure to put in that extra level of drama because that's what makes movies interesting. Your character does not have to be overdramatic, though. You can make them realistic in dealing with their issues. So make sure that you are actually properly representing whatever that issue is. On the strength side of things, people tend to go just as overboard on the flaw side. If you have a strength, it is like a superpower where you are literally able to save the world because you have this strength. But there are mundane strengths that everybody has that also can be interesting to your plot and help move your plot forward and will be more realistic for your character unless you're literally writing a superpowered universe. A more mundane strength would be like interpersonal skills. If a person is really good at relating to other people, they are going to be a great team builder for your story, bringing people together and strengthening, uplifting them. And the better and more cohesive a group is, the easier it is going to be for them to work together to achieve whatever goal they are going for. So having a skill like interpersonal skills, that is a big strength that can definitely help move your plot forward, but it's not a superpower. Anybody can work on it. Anyone can build the skill. It's a skill. So, very ordinary, but very useful. Another mundane strength would be your optimist. Everyone needs a good optimist to keep them from being swallowed by the darkness that surrounds them, especially if you are writing a dark fantasy, a dystopian, or some other genre that requires a lot of doom and gloom to be surrounding your characters. That optimist is going to be a saving grace for your characters to keep them uplifted and moving towards the direction they need to. You can also mess with your optimist and hurt their little feelings constantly by nagging and tearing down that optimism. Either way, it is going to be a great plot points that you can incorporate into your story, because when your optimist starts to lose faith, that's when things start going really bad. And that optimist's ability to regain their optimism is going to be a crucial part for you. So consider applying just some optimism. The next type of strength we are going to talk about is an overgeneralization again, so that we can talk about a bunch of different categories, but it is the learned skill. The learned skill is literally any skill that your character has learned and they have brushed up on and practiced until it became a strength for them. For instance, if you are in a historical or fantasy setting where your character knows how to use a bow, aka archery, that is a skill. They had to spend time to learn how to do every single step of archery and to build their strength so that they could use different types of bows, because different types of bow have a different type of draw strength necessary in order to be able to pull back the string to fire the bow. Very simple in idea, but it takes a lot of practice to do in actuality. So when you are applying a learned skill to your character, you need to make sure that you know about that skill. So once again, you are back in research land, my friend, because essentially writing a novel is like writing a really long research project, only more fun. So when you're putting these skills into your characters, if it's not a skill that you personally have, you are definitely going to have to go and do the research to make sure that you know how that skill actually functions. Because sometimes even people who are not skilled in that area can tell when you have not done your research, because sometimes it's pretty obvious when you don't know how a skill actually works. So you need to at least do some base levels of research so that you understand how that skill fundamentally works. If you want to show off for the people who are more adept in that skill, you need to do a lot of research, maybe even learn that skill yourself so that you can fully apply it properly. But people aren't going to be super nitpicky, but it doesn't hurt to know extra. I mean, come on, learning is fun. Learn the things. Why not? When you're applying strengths and weaknesses to your characters, remember that you don't need to be over dramatic in order to pull off a good character. Mundane strengths and weaknesses are what most people have. Most of us, as far as I know, don't have superpowers. If you have one, let me know, because that would be cool. But for the average ones of us, there is no super dramatic, over the top type of strength or flaw. There are people who have more dramatic strengths and weaknesses, but on the whole, we're more mundane. So absolutely apply more mundane strengths and weaknesses to your characters. Don't be over the top Hollywood all the time. The key when applying these, once again, is making sure that those strengths and weaknesses play a useful role in your plot. How are they helping to move your story forward? So when you are putting them in, don't just fill those slots in order to say, yeah, I gave my character some strengths and some weaknesses. Make sure that they actually have meaning and purpose behind them. I hope you had a fun time talking about the strengths and weaknesses that we can apply to our characters. Please feel free to leave in the comment section below strengths and weaknesses that you have applied to your characters and how they have helped move your plots forward. Other than that, have a great one. Until the next one.